Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF, mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify their fitness journey so they can lose weight, regain their confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host, and I'm just so excited. And the reason I'm excited is because this past weekend, we had the Powerhouse Summit. I'm recording this episode one day after the Powerhouse Summit, which I must say I'm very excited that I'm recording this from my office with nobody home. Nobody can see me in that podcast or a voice only, because I would be on my pajamas right now if I could. The weekend was so amazing. It was so magical. I had so much fun, and it was so great to connect with everybody that I feel like my batteries have been completely zapped. And this morning, honestly, I don't even know how I changed clothes to take my kids to school because battery was on empty. But I wanted to record this episode now because the experience, the feeling, the thoughts are still very fresh in my mind. And I am going to be sharing 5 lessons that I learned from the Powerhouse Summit that happened this past weekend, but not from what the speakers talked about, not from the lessons that were taught during the summit, but more from my perspective on, organizing the event and hanging out with everybody, and my personal lessons from promoting it, hosting it, and doing all the things that I believe are going to be incredibly useful for you, that you can apply to your fitness journey, to your life, in your career. Like on my drive back from Dallas, because I live about 35, 40 minutes outside Dallas, and the venue was in downtown Dallas. So I had a lot of time to think as I was driving back, and, no music or anything. I was just thinking, and I was like, I learned so much from this event. And this is just from the experience of hosting an event like this, of watching, and a lot of challenges that I had to overcome personally in my own limiting beliefs, and how everything came together, that I wanted to share with you. Because if I could bet money with anybody listening to this right now, I can almost certainly guarantee that there is some insecurity that you have. There is some story that you tell yourself about the things that you cannot do, that after you listen to this episode, my hope is that you start to question those limiting beliefs. So here are 5 lessons from the Powerhouse Summit this past weekend that I hosted, that I learned, and that I believe that can help you as well in your life, in your fitness, and all the things. And the number one for me was my fear of the unknown in the context of hosting a live event. I have spoken in events, in seminars, stages in over 30 countries. So I'm no stranger to speaking at events. That is not what kind of petrifies me. What petrified me was organizing the actual event. All the doubts that I had, I drove my team absolutely insane, because I had so many what ifs that I started thinking that could potentially go wrong. But just because I have never hosted a live event of this magnitude, a 2-day event with people flying in from all corners of the country, We had people that were supposed to come even from outside the country, but they had some family emergencies that they couldn't come. So it was a big thing. We had big speakers coming as well. We had Dr. Jessica Shepard. I'm going to talk a little bit more about her in a second, but we had big speakers, and I'm like, what if everybody changes their mind and cancel their flights last minute and nobody shows up? What if something happens in the hotel and we're not able to have the event there? I had all these doubts coming in my mind and all these challenges that I had to overcome personally, because there were a lot of times that I contemplated just refunding everybody's money for their tickets and calling quits and being like, that's it, I can't do it. Why? Because it was something that I had never done before. And as humans, we're conditioned to do things that we are comfortable doing. We do things that, we know what is going to happen on the other side. Even if what happens on the other side is staying the same, which is a place that you might not be feeling all that. But hey, at least it's a place that you're like, just, but that you know. So why would you take the chance of doing something different, of taking a big risk, of inviting all these people, of doing something that is scary to you, be that in the context of fitness, be that hiring a coach or trying a different activity or trying a different way of getting to your fitness goals that is different from what you have always done? That's scary. And now that we are on the other side, had you asked me on Thursday how I was feeling, and Thursday was the day before the event kind of like semi kicked off because we had the happy hour. If you had asked me on Thursday how I was feeling, I would probably have said that I'll never, ever, ever again do a live event because I was scared of the unknown. And now being one day later, I am so grateful that I did it. I texted a friend of mine who hosts a lot of events. I texted him and I was like, this was probably like the most terrifying and the most amazing thing that I have ever done in my business. And that's the only way that I can describe it. But I would never know about this incredible feeling had I not tried. So what are the things that you are not experiencing? What are the next level life experiences that you're not having because you're scared of the unknown? Think about it. And that's my first lesson from hosting the Powerhouse Summit. Now let's go to the second lesson. And for me, that was the importance of not trying to do things alone, as in having people who are better than me at certain things. So one of the reasons that I was scared as shit of hosting the Powerhouse Summit is because I've talked about this before, but I am ADHD. So anything that requires a lot of steps and it has a lot of like logistical moving pieces, I feel incredibly overwhelmed because I know that that's not my area of genius. I don't have a lot of experience hosting, events. Even hosting my kids' birthday parties kind of like freaks me out a little bit because there's so many moving pieces. And I knew that if I wanted to have the right outcome for this event, I was not going to be able to do it alone. I was going to have to hire or bring on board someone who is good at this, who enjoys this, whose area of expertise is operations, is getting things done in a systematic manner, because that is just how their brains operate. Mine doesn't. And that's okay. It is okay to ask for help. It is okay to say that you're not good at all the things. And I think that that's something about women. And that's another thing that we talk a lot about in the summit, the whole weekend, is how women a lot of times are either afraid or embarrassed to communicate their struggles and ask for help because they think that they can or they should be doing everything. and there is a layer of shame with asking for help. There is no shame whatsoever in asking for help. And I'm going to say it right now. I don't know if I would have been able to host the Powerhouse Summit at all if you weren't from the support of my team, especially Tatiana, who does our operations, who honestly, she was reminding me to eat. She was like, have you eaten yet? And I'm like, oh yeah, right. Because I was running around like a chicken with its head cut off. And it really allowed me to put myself on kind of like the other side and thinking about the importance of kind of surrendering control, understanding there are other people who are much better, like infinitely better than me to do certain things. And in the context of fitness, I think a lesson that anybody listening to this can take is, what are the things that you're holding on to because you think you can figure it out? And you've been trying to figure it out and trying to do it on your own, and you keep on failing time and time again. What are the things that, you're not seeing the results that you want? You're not getting where you want to be. And maybe you're embarrassed because you think that you should know how to do it. I've ran a successful coaching business for several years. I could have told myself, surely I know what to do. Like I have the systems inside my business. So surely I can do it in the context of an event. I'm telling you, I couldn't. There were so many things that I would have forgotten. I don't think people would have been fed if you were dependent on me. And that's okay. So what are the things in your life? What are the things in your fitness journey that you're holding on to, that control, to that illusion of power, just because you're afraid of asking for help, because you're afraid of being perceived as a quote unquote failure? Isn't it a much bigger failure to keep on doing the same thing, like falling short, than to raise your hand and be like, yep, I'm struggling over here. Anybody is better at this than me? And I see people doing this with their fitness. Oh, but I should know how to do it. But clearly if you've been doing this for like 5, 6, 10 years and you haven't gotten anywhere, it might be because for this season of life, this might not be the thing that you want to have the energy to do, or maybe the things that you used to do are no longer working and you don't know how to do it differently because it is outside of your scope. Oh, but I should know how to do it because I've been going to the gym for X amount of times and, I should know how to do it. Yeah, I've been going to birthday parties and events for decades. Just a couple of weeks ago, I spoke in 2 events. I attended lots of them. I know a few bits and pieces that I've learned from people who have been doing events for a long time. That doesn't qualify me to be the best person on the planet to put together an event and know how to have all the logistical pieces come together. I needed help. And for a little time, I was like, yeah, maybe I can figure it out this on my own. And then the more I started to look at it, the more overwhelmed I became. And then the thing that I also realized is that overwhelm and that feeling of failure, it started to negatively impact other areas of my life. I was grumpy with my husband. I was short-fused with my kids. I was not being able to be as present with my team of coaches because I was trying to do this thing that is way outside my area of genius. For what? Just because I didn't want to ask for help? How does that make me any better? Thank goodness that I snapped out of it quite quickly. But in the context of fitness, I see people staying on the cycle for so long. Oh, but I've been going to the gym. I've been doing this forever. Right. It's still not getting you where you want to go. So at what point do you kind of surrender and accept that sometimes you do need help? I'm glad I did. Now let's go to lesson number 3 that I personally learned from the Powerhouse Summit, which is the power of being surrounded by like-minded people. And, this was an observation that I had by seeing like our community of ladies hang out in the conversations that were had. And the more I talked with everybody, the thing that I kept on hearing time and time again, which is something that I kind of already knew from going to a lot of events, but it was extra powerful to see that in action on something that I had put together. Well, Tatiana had put together and I kind of like supported her along the way. Because here's the thing. One of the biggest challenges for many people who appreciate fitness, who appreciate like a fit lifestyle, is that more times than not, they don't have lots of people around them that also share the same interests, the same, passion for working out, eating healthily, or bettering themselves and learning more about self-development and things like that. So you start to question whether you're like quote unquote normal, because your normal are always going to be the people that you surround yourself with. It's like you become the 5 people that you hang out with the most. So if you're constantly surrounded by people who have zero interest in taking care of their bodies, or if they are people who have interest in taking care of their bodies, if they are more like on the extreme side, that is like, oh, you cannot have carbs and you suck if you have a glass of wine, or if you're not working out for 2 hours a day, you're a piece of shit, like that kind of stuff. So if you're either surrounded by people who absolutely do not care about fitness and being healthy and being active and eating according to your goals, or you're always surrounded by people who are very extreme with their approach in fitness, that is start to become your normal. So there is something very powerful about being around people who will have a glass of wine, but also wake up early next morning to get a workout in. About people who are talking about waking up. Oh yeah, wake up at like 5 a.m. to get my workout in. It is a conversation that is not abnormal in our community. Whenever you are in a room that is filled with like-minded people, you start to feel more normal. You start to feel more seen. And whenever you see someone who might be a few steps ahead of you and you listen to their struggles and you listen to the obstacles that they had to overcome, that is a spark of inspiration that you might need to kind of stop with the victim mentality of thinking that life is constantly happening to you. And it gives you a different perspective that if that person can, so can you. So that's the power of being in a room with others who share similar interests, who share similar goals, who share similar mindset. And whenever I say room, I'm not talking just about a physical room. It can be an quote unquote an online room. It can be an online community. Is there a benefit of doing in-person stuff? Absolutely. But sometimes it is very challenging to find a bunch of people. You might find like that one person that has an aligned mindset with your goals, and you guys see kind of like it is somebody who inspires you, who kind of keeps you on your toes because they're always doing big things. But if it is just one person that you have there in your environment, make sure that you're going into rooms, online rooms, whatever that is, and finding your people. And still in the context of being surrounded by like-minded people, I've always been very outspoken and loud, and, people have said that I'm too much and all of that. And there have been seasons in my life that I start to question myself. And I was like, am I too much? Should I kind of like tone it down a little bit? And as I start to get more like towards my 40s, I kind of started to stop giving a shit. But there is something so powerful to be in a room where you can truly be yourself. And that's something that I saw by watching a lot of the ladies interacting, is like how much more themselves they started to become as the weekend went by. Like the first day was like kind of walking to the corner of the room and things like that. But then whenever they saw that they were surrounded by people who were non-judgmental, that were just as quote unquote too much as they were, You had these people that walked in and they wouldn't say a word. And by the end of day 2, you could get them to stop talking. And that's exactly why it's so important. There is nothing more beautiful in life than to live as your true, authentic self. But you're only able to do that when you intentionally surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who accept you, who understand your struggles, who inspire you. This is a lesson that I will forever take from being in that room. Am I too much? Sure. But there are people that like my too much. I'll live with that. And as I start getting closer to my 40th, which I just celebrated, I think like I started to run out of shit to give at about like 32, 33. But as I got to 40, I think that was kind of the big turning point for me. But watching a lot of the ladies in the room feeling comfortable with being themselves because they felt like the environment was a safe space of like-minded people was incredible. So that is a huge lesson to be learned. Now let's go to lesson number 4. And this one is going to be a little bit more technical, okay? About something that I talk about all the time. So I'm going to give a little bit of context. For day 2 of the Powerhouse Summit, we had a more practical day, meaning we went to Hidden Gym and we had workouts together and there was an hour of yoga. So it was a lot of like working out and hanging out and paying attention to form and things like that. And I have always been a very big advocate of bootcamp style training being great for community building. But whenever we're talking about specificity of goals, that strategy is not the best. Meaning, if you like going to boot camps, if you like going to, I don't know, like group classes and things like that, it's a great tool from like a community aspect of things. But from a outcome in like accomplishing your goals standpoint, it is not, because there is no specificity. There is no attention to what your personal struggles are. And you walk into a room like that and you're going to have somebody who has, I don't know, 80 pounds to lose, and you have somebody else who wants to have a 6-pack. And both these people are doing the exact same workout and their attention is being divided amongst, I don't know, like 15, 20 other people in the same room. So it's very hard to get the outcome that you want when you're doing the same thing as someone who has a completely different goal as you. So whenever we were walking the attendees through the workouts and things like that, and I like to be very hands-on personally. And Jen, who is our head coach, also very hands-on. She has, nearly 2 decades of experience as a fitness professional. So we're both incredibly qualified. And it was very challenging to make sure that everybody was getting like that one-on-one attention. And we had to create a workout that everybody was able to do. And you had people that hadn't worked out in a year, and we had people that work out 6-7 days a week. Like, it was really when it clicked for me, I'm like, that is what I'm talking about. In the context of this event, a one-off, cool. But there are people that do this every single day, and they expect to have this kind of like magnificent and a specific outcome when they are not getting specific steps and tools to get them to where they want to be. So it was a very good lesson for me as a coach to really see in real life why what we do in the Powerhouse Academy, which is my signature program, is so important, which is creating very specific strategies to each individual. Because even creating the workout for the bootcamp that we had for the Powerhouse Summit was a challenge, because I'll be like, okay, so let's put this exercise. And then I also had to be very mindful that there could potentially be a few people that had, pelvic floor dysfunction, or that they had just recently had a baby, or they were going through perimenopause or menopause. Therefore, they struggled with urinary incontinence. There were so many variables that had to be thought through. And it made it incredibly challenging to fully serve the ones that have limitations and also to fully serve the ones that don't have limitations and want to be pushed. And again, in the context of just one day, like for fun and for a community building, that's cool. But it was very eye-opening for me on how problematic this like more group setting kind of activities, how problematic they can be, especially for those that have very specific goals or that have very specific limitations or, you know, who want that more personalized attention. And listen, I get it. Same. And also another thing that I found is still on the specificity thing. I just thought about it is putting together these speakers. Because if you have a variety of people, which that's what a lot of the more group setting kind of activities have whenever it comes to fitness, everybody's going to have a different need of what they want to learn. So finding that common ground, even to get these speakers, was very challenging because I wanted everybody to get value. So finding these speakers that were going to tick all the boxes to the different seasons of life that the people that were going to be there or where each individual was going to be at in their fitness journey was a big challenge. I truly believe that we were able to nail that, but I cannot imagine doing that on an ongoing basis, which that's ultimately what, for example, a bootcamp class is or a more group setting kind of training is. So that's the lesson number 4. And now we're going to go to lesson number 5, which it's actually quite funny. So I'm going to tell you a story. I actually told this story whenever I was introducing this speaker because it's actually hilarious. So whenever I start putting together the idea of the Powerhouse Summit, I had in my mind a few specific speakers that were like my dream speakers to have. And I'm going to be honest and a little bit selfish here. You know, whenever I was talking about specificity before, this specific speaker that I'm going to talk about now, I didn't really care if anybody wanted to hear from her. I think she's so amazing that I wanted her to come just so I could listen to her. True story. I'm like, I just would love to have her because she seems so cool. Sorry, guys, if you're listening to this and you attended the summit, but I was like, I don't even care if anybody likes her. I think she's a badass. I want her to come just so I can listen to her. So this was like my selfish kind of thought that went on before bringing on this specific speaker. She was a hit. Everybody loved her, but I wasn't really obsessing about specificity whenever it came to her because I just wanted to listen to her myself. And having the event as an excuse to just like hang out with her was perfect. Anyway, so whenever I started to put together the idea of the Powerhouse Summit, I had this specific person, and she is actually in Dallas. And I was like, oh my goodness, if I could get this person to be a speaker at my event, I would like legit die. But there is no way. She's too much of a big deal to come hang out with good old me. And I was like, she's like doing speaking engagements all over the world. And, you know, she's a contributor to all these certifications and blah, blah, blah. And I was petrified of asking her to be a speaker at the Powerhouse Summit. And then one day, I think it was in the evening, I had like, I don't know, a glass of wine and then I gained a little bit of liquid courage. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to message her. And this was already after we had the lineup of speakers already pretty much done. You know, we already have speakers. So if she says no, we're going to be okay. But if she says yes, I'll rearrange things and I'll make it happen. This is on Instagram, by the way. I have never personally met her. We connected through Instagram and we were introduced by a mutual friend. So I sent her a message and I go, hey, I know that you're like so busy and you're like kind of a big deal. Like she is a regular guest on Good Morning America. She's like big time, like TV kind of celebrity kind of stuff. And I'm like, but I totally understand if the answer is no. I get it. I know you're busy, but I thought that I would ask anyway. I'm doing this event in Dallas. And I kept on repeating, by the way, like, don't worry. If it's a no, it's a no. But I thought I would ask. And she's like, okay, just tell me. And I was like, I'm hosting an event in Dallas and it's going to be X, Y, and Z. Here's my vision. I would love to have you. And then 5 minutes later, she goes, oh my God, I love that. Can you give me the details? I died. Legit died and came back to life. I stepped back for a second. I'm like, say that again? You said yes. And then she's like, oh yeah, sure. Just give me the dates. I want to make sure that I'm here. I was like, oh my goodness, is that really her? No, is that really her? And then I asked for her phone number and I'm like, hey, it's better for us to communicate via like phone number because Instagram messages get lost. No, I asked for her phone number because I wanted to make sure that it was actually her. Because at first I thought that she was lying to me. And it was like an assistant or somebody. Somebody had hacked her account and I was going to be left hanging. So I sent her a message and she's like, oh my God, girl. Yeah, I just have to fly out at this time because I'm going to be doing a speaking engagement in like LA. And then after that, I'm flying to Atlanta, but I can definitely come speak. And that's how we got Dr. Jessica Shepard to be a speaker at the Powerhouse Summit. So what is the lesson here? If you don't ask, you don't get. And this applies to everything in life. If you don't ask your spouse for help, chances are he ain't going to give you because you're not asking. People don't read minds. If you don't ask your boss for a raise, you're not going to get, or probably not going to get as much as you'd like. Or maybe you want to ask for a promotion. You want a better title on your work. Or maybe you want to ask to leave work a little bit earlier 3 times a week and arrive earlier. So maybe you can get your workout done at the end of the day. Or maybe you can ask to arrive a little bit later and then stay a little bit later. But people are always so afraid, just like I was, are so afraid of asking for the damn thing that they just keep on ruminating on like, oh yeah, no, there is no way, but without even knowing. So how many things in your life, and even in the context of your like fitness journey, asking your spouse for support to watch the kids so you can train, or ask your spouse to help you out in your meal prep, which can potentially be beneficial for him as well. What are the things that you're not asking? And because you're not asking, you're not getting. Everybody loved Dr. Jessica Shepard's presentation at the Powerhouse Summit. Blown away. She's so smart. She's so competent. But nobody would have had the opportunity to learn more about menopause and perimenopause from one of the leading experts in the country if I didn't message her and took a chance. We're so afraid of rejection, of getting that no, that we try to preserve ourselves by not asking at all. But here's the thing, and that's something that I keep on reminding myself time and time again. The no is a given. The no is already happening. So the moment that you ask, you're already on a 50-50 chance instead of 100 chance. You know what I mean? The thing not happening or you not getting the outcome that you want, it's already happening by you not asking. So the worst that can happen whenever you ask is you get the thing that you're already getting anyway. Or you can get a yes. Or you can get more support from your spouse. Or you can get more time to exercise because you properly communicated with your boss about changing your schedule a little bit and making it a little bit more feasible. So what are the things in your life that you are not asking, that you're not voicing your needs, that could potentially be holding you back and keeping you from accomplishing big things? We have a member, actually, I'm going to be sharing her story because she was at the summit. And that's where I think a lot of, and I'm going to go on a tangent here, so stay with me. The idea of confidence that you gain from fitness and from stay consistent, that confidence that you gain puts you in a much better state of mind to ask for things instead of just assuming that it's going to be a no, because you start to believe that you're worthy, because now you are somebody who cares about yourself. And whenever you start to care about yourself, whenever you start to see yourself in different lenses, you don't feel like that rejection is personal. Does that make sense? So Julie is one of our members in the Powerhouse Academy. She was at the summit this past weekend. And I'm going to share Julie's testimonial because we spoke with her and it's just absolutely incredible. She has been with the Powerhouse Academy for 2 years. And in 2 years, with the confidence that she's gained to ask for things that she didn't have the courage to ask before, she has received a 200% pay increase. You heard that right. 200% pay increase. And before that, they were 4 or 5%. So she went from a 4 or 5% pay increase to 200. That's significant. And whenever I asked her, what do you think helped you? And her response was gaining the courage to ask for the raise, to ask for the promotion, gaining the confidence to ask, to put myself out there and ask. So how many things could you be asking that you're just assuming there are going to be a no? And you might be doing this because, you're not feeling your best. You don't think you're worthy. So how can we start by changing how you feel about yourself and then gaining the confidence to ask and not take it personally if the answer is no? So that is a very important lesson. So the 5 lessons that I learned from the Powerhouse Summit, from my own personal experience, and also from watching these stories from the ladies was, number 1, overcoming the fear of the unknown. And this is my own, I was petrified of hosting an in-person event. And I thought about pulling the plug and not doing the thing so many times and just refunding everybody and be like, we're not doing it. And I'm so glad I did it. It was probably one of the most incredible experiences in my life in the context of business. I absolutely loved it. It was so much fun. I'm so proud of what we have been able to build. So I wouldn't have known this feeling if I had just kind of not done it because it wasn't comfortable. Lesson number 2, the importance of not doing things alone. There are people who are out there who are better than you. And this is my own personal lesson too. Ask for help. Ask for, people who are better than you at doing certain things. There is no shame and there is nothing wrong with asking and looking for people who are going to do a better job than you will. I'm great at certain things. I'm not so great at others, and that's okay. But I think that there is this conditioning that we have to be doing everything all the time and be the best in the world, and then we end up failing and then feeling like a failure, like living that perpetual state of feeling like a failure. And it doesn't have to be this way. There are things that you can ask for help in putting somebody else's hand that will allow you to get to where you want to be, because you're then going to focus on the things that you are best at. Number 3, the power of being surrounded by like-minded people. And this was something that I watched with people attending it. It was incredible to watch how people even transformed throughout the weekend by just being surrounded by people that made them feel empowered, made them feel like, if you can, so can I. Because so many times we're surrounded by people who might not inspire us as much as we would like to, or that they have very different lifestyles. And you start to feel a little bit of an outcast because you want to go to the gym or because you want to eat according to your goals. So whenever you're surrounded by people that have similar goals, similar minds, it makes the journey a lot more enjoyable and the outcome a lot more sweet too, because you're doing it with a bunch of friends. Number 4, I don't know if it was a lesson, but it was almost see, yep, you were right. I do like to be right. I'm going to say it. But this one was even sweeter, which is the importance of specificity. In the context of the boot camp that we hosted on day 2, great community. It's a great tool in the toolbox, but it's not going to be the whole toolbox that is going to get you to the results that you want. And then number 5, if you don't ask, you don't get. How many no's are you assuming that they exist? And even another speaker as well, Annie has worked, she is a life coach and behavioral coach. She's worked with several Navy SEALs and entrepreneurs and people in leadership. And I met her speaking at an event from my business coach, and she had worked with him. And I was like, yeah, she is too much of a big time, like for an event like this. Like that's the story I was telling myself. And whenever I posted about the event, she was like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing. If you need me, I would love to be there for you and support you and be a speaker. And I nearly died. And I had thought about her before, but I was like, no, she's too much of a big deal. I'm not even going to ask. So this event has taught me so much. I could probably list out like 100 lessons, but I am going to settle for 5 for now because I'm tired, because it was a long weekend and I'm still buzzing. I think I'm tired because I got home last night and I couldn't go to sleep, because just looking through all the photos, it was almost like put me back there, and I was just so excited. Thank you all for listening. I'm beyond grateful for everybody that came to the Powerhouse Summit. If you did, if you didn't, stay tuned. There might be another one. We'll see. I'll let you know. We might have recordings available for the Powerhouse Summit, so stay tuned. I'll talk more about this in the coming episodes. In the meantime, I'll see you next week. Adios. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment or voice message at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on Instagram and let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. As for today, this is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.